I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. I hope this story brings you something special and leaves a pleasant impression deep inside you. Leeds woke before dawn. The moist air smelled of rain. Mist lay low over the river air, as if the water had forgotten where its bank was for a moment. On that foggy strip of life, Margaret Hale once learned to be happy, and later, to be silent. She still remembered red strands sticking to her forehead as she ran home from school in Brampton, a crushed coin in her pocket for hot pudding. Her mother taught her to put small things in order: a tablecloth without creases, cups turned face down, and thoughts without unnecessary movements. "Careful with your voice, love," her mother said. "The strong don't shout." Her father kept quiet but could fix anything: a door, a clock, a bicycle wheel. "And a heart?" Margaret once joked. He smiled. "Hearts are fixed by two," he said. "Alone, it just stops and pretends to sleep." She grew up with a quiet sense of order, with faith that life is a line, not a cliff. Nursing school in Leeds taught her to breathe evenly when someone nearby is gasping, and to speak calmly when everything is boiling. She had a light step, an ear for intonation, and a habit of touching things with respect, as if every spoon and every pane remembered all the hands that had held them. She met John at a job fair. Tall, dark, broad-shouldered, a hand like a wooden beam, silver dust from a building site on his hair. He made an awkward joke, and she laughed a little too sincerely. She liked his decisiveness. When he said, "I'll walk you home," he did, without asking about the rain or the distance. She mistook the sharpness in his shoulders for strength, and his hurried kisses for a hunger for closeness that kindness could satisfy. The wedding was small but warm. Flowers in vases smelled of damp and sweet hope. When they moved into their house on the edge of town, the world felt possible as long as they were together. The first 2 years were easy, like a blanket after washing. Something always sizzled in the kitchen. Children splashed in the bath. At night, the wind touched the roof, and Margaret pressed her forehead to John's shoulder, feeling his breath steady her. She was pregnant and laughed when Alice's kicks made her stop in the street. Then Tommy was born, and John held his son carefully, as if he were a fragile ball of warmth. They painted the room a soft green, put up shelves, argued about the pram, made peace on the kitchen table, and those arguments felt like seasoning, not bitterness. The crack arrived as something trivial. First, dinner not on time. "I work all day," John muttered, tearing off his tie. "Am I asking for so much?" She apologized, set something hot on the table, and he melted, kissing her temple. Then, cigarette ash on the floor. He disliked being asked to tidy anything. Then, small steps on her voice. "Speak softer. You're interrupting me." She laughed, turned the volume down, and got used to it. Someone in the neighborhood said it's always like this. Work, bills, tiredness, setbacks. You just have to wait it out. But John's tiredness grew rougher. He came home silent, not the silence of calm, but anger looking for a reason. With neighbors, he had a pocket full of jokes and boasted about the children. At home, sometimes a misfire. He would throw words like a wrench, heavy, straight to the forehead. The first time he raised his hand, her cheeks were already salty with tears. Not from pain, from shame that she hadn't stopped it. Later he came with roses. I exploded. "I was an idiot," he said, cooking pasta with his slightly crooked fingers. She forgave him. That's how the loop begins, with a gift and with guilt, with nights where care mixes with control until you stop telling them apart. She learned to hide bruises, foundation, shadows, the window light at the right angle. She wore high-collared jumpers and a smile that asked no questions. Sometimes the children asked, "Mum, why were you crying?" "The wind got in my eyes," she said. A colleague at the clinic once touched her forearm, noticed a yellow-green mark. "Did you fall?" She held the gaze. "It was silly. I tripped over the kids' playhouse." The colleague nodded slowly and didn't ask again. In stories like this, everything is held together by silence. And the silence isn't your choice. It's a habit of survival. One wet evening, he came home drunk. The children were asleep. The kitchen silence was like glass, clear and sharp. He said something about her looks, about ingratitude, about how every slap in the world flies straight at him. She raised her hands in a calming gesture, like by a panicking patient's bed, but this panic had no switch. His palm cut the air with a dull clap, and the world slid a little sideways. She fell to the tiles, tasted metal in her mouth, and thought only one thing. The children are sleeping, quiet. She stood up steadily and moved a glass away from the edge of the table so it wouldn't shatter. In the morning, she took the kids to school and stood a long time under the shower, waiting for the hot water to unlock the knot clamped in her chest. It did not unlock. She didn't leave. Why, you'd think? She knew the addresses of shelters. She knew the hotlines. She knew the protocols. But knowledge is not a bridge. On one bank, logic. On the other, fear, shame, guilt, and endless maybe. Maybe the tiredness will pass. Maybe I provoke him. Maybe the children. Maybe we'll be fine again. Like in the first year. She cooked soup, paid bills, stacked plates like prayers. She held the home like a lantern in the wind, with both hands, or else it would go out. And then something happened without her involvement. A morning, a slick pavement by the station, a car that lost control for a second. A blow, shouts, blue lights flickering in the fog. John died quickly. When the police brought the news, she was in the kitchen, steam still hanging over the kettle. She sat on a chair and didn't cry. She listened to the words as if from another room. Instantly. "We're sorry. The formalities." She nodded, thanked them quietly, the way you thank someone for a stranger's errand. When the door closed behind them, she tidied the kitchen first. She wiped the table, put the cups back, threw away the tea bag. Only then did she go to the window. Outside, the river moved slowly, and there wasn't a single ripple on the water. Inside, the same. Not joy, not grief. A deep, bottomless calm with no room left for fear. Then came time. A long gray ribbon. Paperwork. Relatives' faces, their eyes sliding over her cheeks, searching for tears. She couldn't cry. The tears had dried up in the earlier years. She spoke correctly, thanked people for their sympathy, made sandwiches. The children hid in her warmth, and she shielded them with her body from everything that lost its shape. At night she got up and walked through the house, listening to it breathe, the pipes rushing, the fridge coughing, the timber sometimes cracking. Life, despite everything, went on. After a few months, she bought trainers. At first she ran a short way, 10 minutes from home and back until her legs asked her to stop. Then longer, along the air, over bridges, through courtyards where the maples were shedding something like rust. She didn't run to get slimmer. She ran so her heart could remember another rhythm, one not set by fear. She signed up for the pool and learned how to breathe properly doing freestyle. She bought canvases and paints, because as a child she had drawn red boats on waters she'd only seen in books. Hands used to latex gloves were now stained with ultramarine and cadmium. She allowed herself dispassionate touch. Not love, relaxation. She didn't lie to herself. She told men plainly that she wasn't looking for more. They came and went. It was warm. It was honest. It was brief. She let no one stay, not out of contempt, but because she didn't trust her own safety next to unfamiliar shoulders. She controlled the door, the time, her boundaries. Her body learned to want again, but her heart refused risk. A month, one, then another, then a third. Another year, another. The emptiness didn't hurt sharply. It was like a big room without furniture, easy to clean, nowhere to sit. The morning she bumped foreheads with Thomas was white, like wash over a canvas. Mist slid from the tree into the grass, and the grass was wet. She was flying downhill, muscles working, thoughts wandering on their own, music in her headphones setting the pace, when suddenly a shadow, a surprise, a bang, a curse. Her phone flew onto the gravel. "Sorry." His voice was warm and low, like tea with honey. She looked up, saw fair hair, a high forehead, a straight but gentle gaze, and felt a familiar cold in her belly. Not from pain, from the past. Reflex stronger than intention. "It's fine," she said, but her voice broke. He reached to pick up the phone. She snatched it up herself, avoiding touch, and ran, like from a dog that once bit you, even if now it lies behind a fence. They saw each other again, by the same bend, on the little bridge, near the cafe where she sometimes bought a latte to go. He nodded. She answered with the same light movement. He didn't try to start a conversation. That was what loosened her guard, the lack of insistence. When you've been pressed for a long time, silence without threat is the best compass. One day she stopped on her own. Boots squeaked on wet gravel. Her cheeks were hot. "I think we run the same route," she said. He smiled. "Or maybe the route runs us." They laughed. He introduced himself, Thomas Carter. She, Margaret. "Margot?" he asked carefully. "Only to the very close," she said automatically, and noticed his eyes accept the boundary without protest. They started having coffee after runs, standing by a bench and wiping rain off their sleeves. The talk was easy, about Yorkshire rain, about Leeds United, about the books he read as a boy, about her canvases where the river had more shades than the sky allows. He listened attentively, without competing for cleverness. She caught herself wanting to tell more, and each time braked, like at a red light. He noticed and didn't push. Sometimes their fingers touched for a moment when he passed the cup, and she felt a wave rise in her. Not panic, more like unfamiliarity. At night she thought about his laugh and the way he tilted his head a little when he asked, "And you?" She decided to do what she had done well these last 2 years, not let anyone inside. "Another experience, another month," she told herself. "I'm in control." And she asked him first, "Dinner?" He agreed, but not like others. No rush, no, "I've got wine at mine." They sat in a small bistro. The waitress wore a blue apron and knew the taste of pie by sight. They talked, lamplight falling on their hands, and suddenly she caught a moment. There is no trap in this quiet. After the third date, he didn't try to kiss her. He just touched her forearm and stepped back, as if to make sure he had the right to one more step. On the fourth, she said, "I don't need explanations if you don't want to. Sometimes closeness is just closeness." He looked thoughtful. "I understand," he said, "but I don't want to make you a box to tick. I'd rather know you're there, when you're actually there." That equality unbuckled invisible straps from her. They kept meeting. Morning runs, fairs, his stories about working in a design studio, her new canvases where the water was learning to be more than cold. She brought the children to the park, and Thomas built a fort of branches with them. "Higher, like a castle," Tommy begged with a little stammer, and Thomas built. Alice painted stones, and he said, "You've got an eye like your mum," without exaggeration. He didn't intrude, didn't command, didn't try to be the new dad. He was just a grown-up nearby. someone you could trust with a ball. But when they were alone, her body remembered old alarms. Once, when he leaned in, she jerked back so sharply she knocked over a glass. Wine bled over the tablecloth in a burning stain. She tensed, waiting for his reaction, subconsciously, as always. "It's all right," Thomas said. "Stains are the story of the evening." He went for napkins. Later, outside, he asked, "Are you afraid of me?" No pathos, no offense. She gathered words like crystal beads so they wouldn't fall. "I'm afraid of a repeat. Afraid I'll wake one day and not know how to breathe next to someone again." He nodded. "Let's agree on this. You tell me when you don't have enough air. I'll step back. I'm not here to defeat your fears. I'm here to walk beside you until you learn to trust not me, but yourself." Their first night wasn't a victory. It was a conversation in bodies. "Slow," she said, and he listened. If she tensed at a sudden move, he stopped, held her wrists, giving her the weight of warmth, not force. For the first time in years, she felt she didn't have to prove anything. Their whisper was simple. "Is this good?" "Yes, but a little slower here." "All right." She laughed softly in the dark, because laughter suddenly turned out to be allowed. In the morning he made toast and didn't ask when he could call her Margot. She said it herself. "You can." It meant more than any "I love you." She chose therapy herself. She booked a psychotherapist with gentle eyes who said, "Shame has nothing to hold on to. It's smooth, but we'll find a notch." In the first sessions, her restrained voice suddenly broke as she described washing her face, working cotton under a purple trace. She learned to call things by their names. Violence instead of "he was tired." Fear instead of "I'm just not ready." Thomas sat in the lobby, sometimes waited with a coffee and a brief "How are you?" No interrogation. He wasn't a savior. He was a shore where water can spill and not dissolve. New sounds began to appear in her house. The children's laughter grew higher and freer of care. Doors no longer slammed. Voices didn't slide into shouting. She noticed she was breathing with her belly, not the top of her chest. In the mirror, she saw not only hair color, but the line of her chin, and on it a stubborn shadow. "I am." One morning as they ran together, Thomas said, "I keep thinking about how many people around us carry loads we don't see." She slowed. "I keep thinking about those who don't even have a bench to sit on." Back home, she searched for support groups in the city. She found volunteer programs, shelters, hotlines, often waiting lists, not enough hands, not enough rooms. She went to a volunteers meeting, sat in the back row, listened. Women spoke in voices that trembled and held at once, about night flights with children in pajamas, about papers, about courts, about learning to laugh out loud again. Margaret raised her hand. "I can take 2 shifts a week," she said. She painted rooms in the shelter gentle colors without harsh brightness. She carried food parcels. She cooked soups that smelled like home. She led support groups where she didn't advise but asked, "What helped today?" On Sundays she organized runs, because movement teaches the body that it belongs to us, not to fear. 2 of Thomas's friends set up old exercise bikes in the garage, and the shelter kids laughed, pedaling and believing they were riding to the sea. Together with her own therapist, she prepared a short first safety program. How to pack a go bag, what to say to a teacher, how to keep notes if you decide to go to the police, how not to punish yourself if today it didn't work. The project grew like bread on yeast, a small city grant, then neighbors' donations, then a fair. Someone sold homemade pies, someone handmade cards. Thomas lamps from reclaimed wood, beautiful and warm. They called the space Air and Light, after the river, and the idea that every darkness needs light, not as judgment, but as a way through. One day a woman came up to her at the shelter, tall, a messy braid, and a very straight back carrying the weight of escape. "I saw you in the group," the woman said. "You spoke so calmly about what happened to you. Yesterday, I managed to tell my daughter, we are not to blame." Margaret nodded, and something in her chest shifted, like a curtain sliding from a window. When the woman left, she stepped outside and cried for the first time in a long while, not from pain, from relief. Thomas stood beside her silently, laid his jacket over her shoulders. "You're doing something important," he said. "We are," she corrected him. Meanwhile, her relationship with the children transformed too. Alice started acting in the school play and asked her to make the sets. They painted a cardboard sky together, and Alice said, "Mum, you make colors real." Tommy took to football, and for the first time brought friends home not with a careful look, but with the noise only fearlessness brings. In the evening, putting them to bed, she noticed their shoulders relaxed and didn't flinch at sudden sounds. Her house again became a place where a door is a door, not a border. The ending didn't come like fireworks. It came like the habit of happiness, mornings when your body wakes without the thought, "Is everything calm?" Letters from women. Thank you for being there that night. In the evening, she and Thomas sometimes argued, of course, about paint in the kitchen, about time, about the weekend. But there was no knife in those arguments. There was, "I don't like it when..." "I hear you. Let's do it this way." For the first time, she felt that love is not promises, but daily precision and respect for boundaries. That sorry needn't be capitulation, it can be a bridge. That sexuality can be bodily joy, without debt and fear, without roles and shoulds. And that "I'm with you" means I'm with you even when it's hard for you to be with yourself. On the anniversary of their accidental run, Thomas took her up a hill from which you could see the water and the roof of her house. "I don't want to be the answer for you," he said. "I want to be a question that doesn't hurt. How are you today?" She laughed, hid her face in his neck, and answered, "Today, I'm someone who isn't afraid to answer." They sat listening to the city breathe with them. Later, when Aryan Light received a larger grant and they moved to a big space with high windows, she organized an evening of stories. Not for confessions, not for sensation, for quiet voices that had learned to hear themselves. She went last. She stood for a long time, looking at the women in the first row. Familiar eyes, tired yet already shining. "I'm no hero," she said. "I just reached a place where you can sit and rest. If you haven't been there yet, walk beside us. Falling isn't shameful. It's shameful to stay down because of a stranger's voice in your head. Our bodies are ours. Our voices are ours. Our decisions are ours. We don't have to be strong every day, but we can be together." The applause wasn't loud, but it was long, like the warm breath of a blanket. Later still, she and Thomas planted a maple in the garden. The children laughed as mud clung to their boots. "Let's call it Firefly," Tommy cried. "It's a maple, not an insect," Alice objected. Thomas promised to make lanterns that would glow through the crown at dusk. In the evening, the maple stood like a thin spear in the ground, and Margaret ran her fingers over the young bark. She touched it and understood. The roots were already working, even if unseen. There were days when fear returned, a stranger's shout on the street, a dull door slam in a shop, and her body clenched as if someone were fitting a key into it. Then she phoned her therapist, or Thomas, or went to Aryan Light and made tea for someone else. Strange arithmetic. When you divide warmth, it multiplies. She allowed herself to get tired and not be ashamed of it. She taught the children to say, "I'm angry," and "I'm scared," as easily as "I'm hungry." And she taught herself, too. Once on a morning run, they drifted apart at the bend again. He sped up. She fell behind, studying the mist in the grass. Suddenly, someone unseen from the past tapped her rib cage. She stopped, laid her palm on her ribs, and said aloud, "I'm here." That was enough. She moved on and caught up with him by the bridge. He turned, raised an eyebrow. "Just listening to myself," she said. "And what did you say?" "That I'm not what happened to me, and that ahead of me there is." Back home, she made pancakes for the kids and for herself, black coffee without sugar. The window reflected the garden, where the firefly maple was still learning to be a tree. Oranges lay on the chopping board, their scent mixing with warmth from the oven. Her phone buzzed. A message from a new woman in the group. "Thank you for answering last night. I woke up today and for the first time wasn't afraid of the morning." Margaret smiled. She knew an inspiring ending is never a full stop. It's a comma before a road that continues, and if someone is only now gathering the strength to get up, let them know. The bench beside you is warm. There is a bench, and those who sit on it don't become weak. They become visible. When another rain comes, when the mist settles on the air again, she will run, not to escape, but to meet the day. Thomas will run beside her. The children will wave from the window, and in her heart there will be calm. Not because the world has changed completely, but because she changed the way she lives in it. Love is not a rescue operation, and not a sentence. Love is a space where you can breathe fully and still hear another person. And even if the wind of old nights sometimes taps at the window, she has lamps, a maple, and people who know how to hold the light. This light does not judge the dark. It simply is while someone walks toward it. To anyone afraid, she can now say, "Fear is not the end. The end is when we stop walking." Don't stop. I once ran beside you, and it worked.